All right, and we're back. Welcome to the Awaken podcast. I'm your host, Maria Christine, and I am super excited to announce today's guest, Karolina. Karolina, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I can't wait for this conversation.
Oh, I am so excited. For context, Carolina and I, we met actually, we are in a similar mastermind together, and we got the opportunity to meet in Canada last fall. And it feels like eons ago. But I loved hearing about the important work that she's doing in the world. And so I was really excited to bring her on. She is an alcohol free empowerment expert who helps intuitive women ditch alcohol and unleash their entrepreneurial fire, which I absolutely love. She's worked with thousands of clients to lose their desire to drink and unleash a new level of health, happiness, and a drive to go after their biggest dreams. She is also the best selling author of the book Euphoric: Ditch Alcohol and Gain a Happier, More Confident You, published through HarperCollins. And her work has been featured in the Huffington Post, Gold Digger Podcast, The Sunday Post, Pop Sugar, Real Simple, Elite Daily, and multiple TV shows. She is amazing. She is phenomenal. I'm going to let her speak more to her work and what she's doing now. But welcome. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you for the warm welcome.
Yeah. Okay, so I told her we are going to dive in today. We've been really diving deep into how does one find their purpose? How do we land in our purpose? How do we live from our purpose? So I'm going to have Carolina share a little bit more about her story. Can you share how did you land in this work? Is this something that you knew you were always going to do? Was it a bit of a journey to land in what you're doing now? Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, that's so good. And I think like what we're going to talk about today, what you love to focus on is so intertwined with like my deeper philosophy. Like purpose is ambiguous. Purpose is like one of those vague terms. It's almost like you get the side role of like, okay, find my purpose. Like what does that even mean, right? And I
Yes.
think that's what I was living in like when I was a drinker. And basically, I came into alcohol like most people do. It started as a social thing in college and high school and stuff like that. And honestly, I probably drank the most in that era of my life around like college, grad school. I was like, no healthy boundaries around alcohol. Let's just say that. But as I got older, I was maturing. I got married. I started my career. I started settling down. And so I really started to have more boundaries around alcohol. And it became something that I did on the weekend. And so, like Monday through Thursday, I tried pretty hard not to drink and I would, do the healthy stuff. I would go to yoga classes, I would run, I would, drink green juices and stuff like that. But every weekend, that was my release. Every weekend without fail, I would either go hang out with my friends and drink, it was some other social event, restaurant, sushi, drinking, open a bottle of wine at home. Like it didn't matter. Every single weekend had alcohol involved. And so even though I was trying to minimize it and I was always trying to like drink less, like because I was unwinding with alcohol every weekend, on Mondays, I like it all caught up with me. And I felt so horrible on Monday mornings. I felt like a shell of myself. Obviously, you have the exhaustion and the toll it takes on your body, which I can go into, but it was really kind of this like mental load too. Like I was just depressed and like, oh my God, I don't want to go to work. I don't want to like deal with stuff. And I would slowly get my energy back throughout the week. And then it was like Thursday or Friday night again. And it was like ready to go back at it, right? And I lived in this cycle for years. At the same time, I just want to paint the picture. I was working in a cubicle at a university.
Okay.
I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. In fact, I had an English master's and I had an art history major. So I was like one of those people who's like,
Oh.
well, who's gonna hire me? You know what I mean?
And
I
you kind
just,
of just
I,
landed in a job that you were like, well, it pays the bills. It's
yeah,
there.
yeah, it's there. And actually, I worked at a university, so like it was a lot more fulfilling, I think, than like maybe working in like a purely like profit-driven type company or something like that. But it still was like pushing paper and like, you know what I mean? It still didn't
Yeah.
feel like it was making an impact.
Yeah.
And well, let's just get back to like, the Monday through Friday loop because I was so stuck in it for so long, but I didn't really see a way out of it. Because I think like the socialization of like, well, drinking is what normal adults do.
Yes.
And like it's just so ingrained in our society that I really thought that if I wanted to escape that loop, I would have to become like this outcast that like has to tell the world that I have a problem with alcohol. And I was like, okay, no, I'm not doing that. So I
Yeah.
just kept it up for years.
And I just think it's wild. I really do want to say, like, you don't really even think about it until you point it out how automatic and like ritualistic it is in America. Maybe it's other places too. I haven't lived other places for context, but how it's just like, oh, you know what? We do the work grind Monday through Thursday. Oh, it's Thursday night. Can I crack my first one? Or, oh, Friday night, I'm going to go out for wine with the girls. Or it's so automatic until the point where you honestly ask yourself, do I even want this glass of wine? Or am I just doing this out of habit, out of like automatic, and I think again, like there's so many levels and layers and underlying motivators for why people drink. I know, like for me, even I was a former very highly anxious person. And though I wouldn't have admitted it at the time, I feel like by the weekend, I was so stressed, anxious, whatever it was, frustrated, just like, in the work grind, that it was a way to also like alleviate the anxiety. Like I didn't have other tools. And unfortunately, I think that's not uncommon for high achieving women to use that glass of wine or whatever it is as like a calmer. And again, we just don't really think of that as being a problem because it's so accepted.
Yeah. And it's like for me too, I think I didn't, back then it's so normalized that I didn't see the deeper existential question that my soul, like what was really going on is like it was a TGIF every week. It was like how fast can we get to the weekend? And like at the time there were a lot of breweries opening up in San Diego where I lived and like wineries were becoming a thing. So it's not like I couldn't wait to like crack open a bottle of vodka and chug it, but it was like but I literally couldn't wait for the weekend to have like the next outing, the next like, oh, cocktails and culture night, like whatever it was,
Yeah.
that I didn't realize how unfulfilling my week was. And I think so many people live through that cycle, but it wasn't until I removed alcohol that it like really dawned upon me. And the way I did that was really sneaky is like I actually heard of dry January for the first time. It was back in 2018. And that to me was like, oh, well, this is acceptable. Like I can actually have an excuse of like what I'm gonna say to people. And that was
Yeah.
the first time I tried on alcohol-free living as an adult. Like I hadn't gone a weekend without alcohol for all the years at that point. I was 30 at that point. And I actually fell in love with not drinking during dry January. Like I loved the feeling of the peaceful mornings. I loved having the deep sleep. I loved even I noticed like I was going hiking more and feeling more connected to trees and clouds and just finding like a new sense of a high. And then
Yeah.
February comes around. I still believe that to be a normal adult, I have to drink. So I drink a few times, and it's
Yep.
the biggest letdown in the world. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
hated it. Not only does it ruin my sleep and make me super foggy the next day, but I even notice, like, in the moment, it makes me cranky and impatient. And, like, it completely started to topple. Like, wait a minute. I literally thought I was drinking for fun. This actually isn't fun. And so I
Yes.
decided at that moment to not only take another break from alcohol, which just turned into 8 years alcohol free recently,
Oh my
but
God,
also to
congratulations.
unpack every single belief and assumption I thought I had about alcohol and completely change my subconscious mind around it. At the same time, and we can kind of go into that deeper too,
Yeah.
I decided to actually figure out what does give me a meaning, fulfillment and meaning in this world.
Mm,
And that wasn't an overnight journey, but I think because there's so many gifts that you get when you decide to reevaluate alcohol, there's so much confidence involved, there's so
yes.
much courage involved. There's so
Yes.
much intuition that you start getting when you start hearing your actual inner voice instead of the cacophony of alcohol. There's so much creativity that unlocks, and that it's those gifts that I was given early on in my alcohol-free journey that actually spurred me into really discovering my purpose and knowing what I wanted to do in this planet. And I actually talk about it like a lot on my social media. There's this phenomenon, Maria, called the alcohol-free brain scramble. And basically what it is, it's a neurologically proven window of time where your brain, especially when you go from someone who, was a drinker, always said yes to a glass, really defined themselves in that way, to
Yeah.
someone who doesn't drink, your brain is completely confused. The identity has been so scrambled in its mind that it's like, what is going on? Who are we? And in that moment, neurologically, you can scramble any other identity you have about yourself. And so back then, I never thought I could be an entrepreneur, for example. Like
Wow.
I grew up as a daughter of immigrants, very shy, introverted. I thought entrepreneurs were these Silicon Valley guys, super charismatic, right?
Yeah.
I never thought I could write a book. I always wanted to write a book, but I never actually sat down to write once I started drinking. I did before not drinking, right, when I was younger, but once I started drinking, I never wrote. And so I had these just like really solid beliefs about my identity at the point that, but by the time I'm going through this journey, and during the alcohol-free brain scramble, everything got shook up. Everything, right? Because it was like, well, I never thought I could go alcohol-free and be so happy about it. Why couldn't I be an entrepreneur? Why
What
couldn't I
else
run
could
half
I do?
marathon? Why
Oh,
couldn't I write a book, right? And that changed everything from me. And that's a journey I also walk women through because literally anything is possible from that. Because imagine, Maria, that someone has like they feel stuck in life and then they have their dream identity. Nothing is cataclysing them to cross the divide. Nothing is like this is just this far out someday land for them. But when
yes.
you go alcohol free, it's like there's fairy dust that's put on you and all of a sudden, the jump to this side is so much easier and faster because of all the other changes that are happening in your brain at the same time.
That is amazing. I've never thought of it like that. And it totally makes sense that not only like is your identity beginning to change when you decide to go alcohol free, when you decide to make that decision. And I think, right, most people think of loss of like it, and not even like if you're an alcoholic, but just like again, you're like used to doing that every weekend. So it becomes a part of your identity. And I think when people quit or decide I'm going to try to go without, the brain focuses on losing. What am I losing? Right. But you're saying in that brain scramble, you could also actually focus on, yeah, but what could I do now? Could I become the author? Could I become an entrepreneur? Could I become a female founder of XYZ? And I think if like we can share that with more people of like, yes, it might feel like a loss of something momentarily, but it's also an opportunity, a window to like what can I say yes to. And I love that you literally support women through this. And actually I don't even know, is it also, are your programs open to men or is it just women?
Yeah, they are. We actually do have really cool guys that come through our world, but
Okay.
I normally attract women, so it's just easier to say that word, but yeah.
Yeah, no, and I totally figured, but I was just thinking like again, what an also amazing opportunity as well for men, women, however they identify. I just think having a community support, someone to like walk this journey with, because like you said, at the end of the day, it's such a core need and desire is to belong. And so it's like, okay, well, if I now am an outcast and I'm not drinking with my friends, now it's like I don't belong. But again, you provide this community, this program, and things with people. I just love that. We could take this in so many different ways, but I'm genuinely curious. And then I want to go back into like the work you do with your clients. But for you, when did you feel like after you'd quit, you started doing some entrepreneurial things, I would assume, like when did you begin to feel like things were clicking and like you'd found your purpose? And again, I kind of say that as like a euphemism because like you said, it's an ongoing journey. Purpose is an ongoing journey. But when did that start to click for you?
Yeah, I think I got some really big definite signs. And, I'm like, I know you're big and connected to like source
Mm-hmm.
in the universe. And so I never got signs like that back when I was drinking. In fact, the only message I got from my intuition was those Monday mornings. It would whisper to me, Carolina, you're made for more. And I was like, okay, cool, but what do you mean? What do you want me to do? You know what I mean? I knew it was about the drinking, but obviously we know what my hangups were for so long. So it's like I heard this really small whisper from my intuition, you're made for more, you're made for more. But it didn't
Mm-hmm.
have any messages for me, any signs. Like, for example, I wanted to write a book ever since I've been a little girl. Like, I was the little girl who wrote short stories and poems and had so many journals, right? And guess what happens, Maria? I start drinking in college and my writing just dries up.
Ah,
Not only do I stop like writing, but I even stop journaling. And like what a sign that you're like disconnected with something inside of you. But the
yeah.
thing is the desire to write a book never went away. So like later on in my 20s when I'm still, drinking, I make these New Year's resolutions that this is the year I will write a book. And so I would resolve to, write 30 minutes every week. And I would do it the first week in January and then never again. I didn't have ideas, I didn't have the creativity, I didn't have the discipline, obviously. And let me just say, it was a lot easier to open a bottle of wine than write the next great American novel, right?
Yeah.
It just became like when you give yourself that momentary gratification and that becomes a habit, it is so hard to do hard things because you are literally not used to that. I
Uh-huh.
remember even the Christmas before I went alcohol free. my sister-in-law and I were having a conversation and I'd already had a few drinks and she asked me like what's the one thing that you want to like do in your life that you would regret so badly if you didn't do? And I remember almost being brought to tears and being like saying in the most desperation I could, like, if I could just write a book. And that's so sad is like when I was a little girl, I imagined writing multiple books, right? And here I was like, just one book, if I could just write one book, right? And
Yeah.
again, it just keeps on going like that. And so when I go alcohol free, all of a sudden, I am in my first alcohol free vacation. It's in Hawaii. I'm having the best vacation ever. Like like you know how you're saying it's a loss? Like loss what? I'm
Yeah.
seeing the island. I'm waking up early with the sunrise. I'm snorkeling. And you know what's so funny is like I'm walking around and I'm watching people drinking in dark bars. And I'm like, you came to Hawaii to go sit in a dark bar to drink instead of, you know what I mean? It
And
all of
then
a
they're
sudden dawned
hungover so
on
that
me,
they don't even get out to the beach in the morning to see the
right?
sunrise
And I'm
because
not
they're
trying
in
to be
there.
judgmental because that's exactly what I used to do, but it just dawned on me how that's actually how you're missing life, you know? And so I was
Yes.
sitting on the beach and I'm watching the sunset, and at the exact moment I'm on a popular beach. A lot of people are scrambling to go to a bar to try to get a cocktail to watch the sunset with. And I'm like, you're missing it. And in that moment, this word comes to me from the universe, euphoric. Carolina, this is what it feels like to be euphoric. You are meant to launch a business and write a book about this. And in that moment, it was like given to me. And
It
1 week
landed.
later, I swear to you, not Maria, 1 week later, I'm sitting in my cubicle, and after years of writer's block, after years of having no idea what to write or anything like that, my book, Euphoric to Alcohol Again, a Happier, More Confident You,
It's
comes to me
literally
in
the
a
most
single,
beautiful book too, truly.
thank you. It comes to me in a single download, every single chapter, what the whole thing is about, and the roadmap to like write it. Now, obviously, it took me a while to like execute that, and it came out 4 years later by HarperCollins. But like in one moment's like flash, you know, and that's what I think it happens is like the alcohol-free brain is capable of million-dollar ideas. And
Yes.
especially the brain scramble, like there's so much neuroplasticity and neuroscience and rewiring that's happening in that moment. It is so cool to see what happens. And so that's like how these signs started hitting me. And, you know, of course I was taking the baby steps. Of course I was like, maybe I'll file an LLC and I'll start posting on social media. But the moment I started posting on social media, I was committed to like being a very consistent voice in the space. And I
Yeah.
just took all the steps. You know, I got certified, I got my programs together, I started signing clients and all this kind of
Oh
stuff.
my
But it's
gosh.
also been these moments of time where I get these divine downloads, like these like huge, maybe like once a year, like a really big one from like God, source, universe, where it
Yes.
is just like, not only is this your purpose, but this is the next step to unlocking it. And this is how you reach so much more women. And it's just been so cool because especially when you feel lost and confused and stuck, when you feel like you're actually being guided by something bigger than you that's
Yes.
trying to tell you the way and the roadmap, listen to the signs and synchronicities. They are there.
So good. It's it's coming forward to say like it just feels like what most people we don't want to say, but alcohol ultimately it's dampening your desires. It's dampening what you really want to do because just pulling back from the stories you were mentioning, it's become such an automatic behavior to reach for that drink, to wait for, oh my gosh, is it Thursday? Is it Friday? Can I have that beverage yet? And honestly, people are reaching for like, okay, I'm going to have that drink. I'm going to have my Netflix and wine night. I'm going to do margarita night with the girls or whatever it is. But then they're ultimately avoiding that underlying, yeah, but what is your actual heart's desire? What are you here for? Or even as simple as like, I just think so many adults, I was a former occupational therapist. So many adults would get to age 40, 50, 60, whatever in the hospital, and they wouldn't have any hobbies. They wouldn't like do anything fun, except for like go out and drink, and it's like they never picked up pickleball, they never hiked, they never went to Hawaii, they never ran the marathon or whatever. So it's just like it can be such a dampener. And if people are just willing to get curious, like you said, you got curious. It started out as a dry January. It started out as like a little more socially acceptable and then remain open to the possibility of what can happen, about getting these downloads, about landing in your purpose, about what is possible. I mean, just would you share a little bit more? Because I know there are people who are listening who are already like they're leaning in, they're getting curious, they're maybe also being open to explore a dry January, a dry month, or whatever it is Can you share more about the science kind of behind? I know a lot of people are like, yeah, but tell me more about that. So, what happens either like when we drink, what's happening versus, the changes in the brain that start to happen from the time you say, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. And I'm assuming things happen over time the longer you go without alcohol. Could you share just a few of those facts for us?
Yeah, or you could write a whole book about this.
I figured
I have a
totally.
lot in my book, so go pick up
Yes,
Euphoric if this
please.
is
We're going to
interesting
have
to you.
all of
But
that in the show notes.
I think something that's the most interesting to me is that, most people drink because you get that 20-minute buzz. And that's what becomes really alluring about it is like you do have that, oh, this feels good in the moment, right?
Yeah.
And scientifically, what's happening is alcohol is releasing a very high level of dopamine in your brain. And I'm going to just be really frank, like so does cocaine, so does heroin, right? And it's a very artificial spike. And so your brain dopamine like feels like a pleasure chemical because it makes us feel good, but our brain doesn't release dopamine from pleasure. It releases dopamine naturally from stimulation and challenge. So when your brain releases like dopamine from something like alcohol, something you didn't have to work hard for, something you didn't do anything for, your brain knows something is wrong. It knows that this didn't earn it. And so what happens is that it knows it's basically like an artificial release. And what happens is it starts to retract the receptors that catch the dopamine molecules over time and become completely numb and desensitized to dopamine in general. And so,
Oh,
not just when you're
interesting.
drinking, basically your dopamine baseline, we don't want spikes. We want our dopamine baseline to be high. And so,
Yeah.
your dopamine baseline gets lowered as a drinker. And this is how I used to feel. Like, yes, I loved the happy hour and going out and stuff like that. But during the week, I was super apathetic. I felt like just this whole ho hum lowness, apathy. I wasn't like a pessimistic person. I've always been optimistic, but I was just like, you know what I mean? Just like down
Yeah.
there. And then it
Yeah.
was the spikes of alcohol that would make me feel better. And then you'd go crashing down, right? And in addition to that, alcohol releases a lot of cortisol, adrenaline in your mind, and something called dynorphin, which most people haven't heard of. So the first two obviously stress you out. The
Yeah.
second one, dynorphin, they've actually found in high levels in the brain of people who commit suicide. It is actually a neurochemical that makes you feel ashamed, depressed, low, and sad. And so anytime you drink and you wake up at 3 a.m. or 5 a.m. and you're like, oh God, and you feel like everything's wrong with your life, everything's wrong with the world, who are you? What are you doing? It's literally not just you. You literally just had injected a chemical that told your brain to release that to make you feel that way. And so I remember
Wow.
getting so attached to this feeling of being worthless and never being able to keep promises to myself and not being able to make progress in my life. And it was the dynorphin talking, like it wasn't even me, right? So you
That's
remove
wild.
alcohol. First thing that's going to happen is that stress hormones are going to rebalance. You're not going to be releasing that dynorphin. Your dopamine baseline is now going to elevate. Alcohol also lowers our ability to release serotonin and GABA, which also make us feel calm. And so now your serotonin and GABA production are going to go up too. So just on the mental landscape alone, within a month, two, three, obviously depends on the person,
Yep.
your mental like baseline, your sense of happiness, your sense of positivity, action, your ability to like see the world with opportunities is just going to go so much higher. And I
Wow.
think that's so important because again, why are we drinking? We're drinking because we think it makes us feel good. And if we really understood the science of what it's doing long term, and I don't just mean with people who are like severely addicted to alcohol, any kind of drinking will do this, social
Yes.
drinking, even occasional drinking will do it. It's
Agreed.
doing this to the
Thank
brain.
you for putting that because again, I think people think like, oh, well, that's probably for people who drink like, 4 or 5 glasses a couple nights a week. Like, no, no, no. You're saying like again, no matter how much you are drinking, if you are still an occasional or a social drinker, these are the known impacts that are happening on a brain-based level. It's like it's good to know the facts, just like how I feel like I don't know if it was lawsuits or whatever, but the cigarette company, right, had to start like putting a Surgeon General's warning saying, hey, this is actually could highly cause you lung cancer or something. I don't want to get the statement wrong. But again, like I just feel like should we not be more informed about what alcohol is doing to our brains? And I just think right now it's getting better maybe, but it wasn't, growing up.
No, of course it wasn't. And there's just so much more coming out every day. Like there's a
Yeah.
recent study that just came out this year from the University of Minnesota. And it was all about how, anyone who drinks alcohol on a regular basis, it didn't even a little bit, was shown that their brain starts to silo and doesn't communicate with the whole brain anymore. So just think about what that means for visionary thinking and million-dollar ideas and just the ability to have emotional intelligence and regulation. Your brain isn't communicating with itself anymore. It's getting siloed and stuff like that. And I don't know if you know Dr. Daniel Ammon. He was one of the biggest advocates. He's a huge, neuroscientist and psychologist. He's one of the biggest advocates who first started standing up and speaking about the harms of alcohol to the brain. And now, like, it's pretty normal for, doctors to speak much more up about it because,
Yeah.
we've really changed our cultural narrative around it because of
Yes.
the sober curious movement and stuff. So you're
Yes.
right. Growing up and when we were drinkers, none of this information was available, but now it really is becoming so. And I think it's not the scare tactic. It's just like, are we really believe, like when you believe alcohol relaxes you, or you believe that alcohol makes you feel good, or you believe alcohol is fun, how much of that is an assumption versus actual, like real data and
Yes.
looking at the whole picture too? Because, alcohol might relax you for 20 minutes and then it releases all these stress hormones that make you feel way more stressed out than that. So, like, are you looking at the bigger picture and stuff like that? Plus, there's this actually really interesting study I wanted to share with you real quick. They put brain nodes on participants' brains to be able to capture their brain waves. And at first, everyone had a long day at work, so the scans were showing pretty chaotic waves. And
Yeah.
then everybody goes to a bar and restaurant and orders a drink, and all of a sudden, the brain waves like smooth out and relax. But here's the kicker: nobody actually drank the drink yet, they just put in the order. So your brain is responding to the anticipation of something that you've taught it will relax it, not the actual ethanol itself. Ethanol actually will make your brainwaves more chaotic. So isn't that interesting? It's like we have put this ritual and embedded relaxation into it, so our brain responds that way. It is not actually doing that. You can put in any ritual in your life,
Yeah.
whether it's going out and watching the sunset, taking a hot bath, playing with your dog, and have that same level of like, oh, now the day is over, now I can like let my hair loose and stuff like that. That's how powerful our brains are to attach that level of symbolism and meaning to these inanimate objects. And I have these videos where I talk about how like alcohol is made up. Like, yes, alcohol exists in nature. You can drop some grapes off the ground and they will ferment. But
Yeah.
like what we have in society is the same as money. Like money is made up. Yes, there's green paper, but like our concept of money is completely a human concept. We've attached all the attributes to it. We've attached
Yeah.
all the meaning and all that stuff. The same thing happens to alcohol. It's completely made up. Almost everything most people believe about alcohol is either completely false or completely disempowering. Because when you believe, for example, you need alcohol to feel confident when you're socializing, what do you think you're telling your inner self? You are not confident enough on your own. You have to drink this drink to be better. That is
Yeah.
not confidence. That is telling your subconscious over and over again that you suck. And I know because I did that to myself for over a decade, right?
Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh. You hit it right on the nose. One, I can tell this is a topic that you are meant to, that your soul is like here to speak on. You just light up when you speak on it. So thank you for sharing all of that. And like you said, this is not even about shaming anybody who drinks. It's not about judging anybody who drinks. It's actually about like being informed. It's like for those of us who were raised, I don't know, like grew up in the 70s, 80s, 90s or whatnot, even probably the thousands. We just weren't informed. I grew up with parents. And again, like, so you said, like, we attach these symbolism, meaning it's built kind of embedded in the culture and often by like maybe people who we grew up around. And so I wouldn't say like neither of my parents had a problem, but it was just growing up watching my parents get done with a day. And if it was a Thursday or Friday, my mom might help herself to a drink, and I feel like it wasn't really ever said, but also like, like she'd have her drink, her chips, and we'd turn Oprah on. You know what I mean? Like, and that was how she would decompress. Same with my dad, especially if it was in the summer, come home from a long day, pop open a beer. So we start creating these associations really early on of like, oh, okay, it's a long day. Oh, but a drink will make it better. Or if you grow up, and I don't know, maybe this isn't just a rural thing, but I grew up in a rural area here in Minnesota. And I do just think they've really built a culture around drinking makes you part of the club. It's very part of that like belongingness, not even maybe like even, oh, I got to be confident to drink, but if I want to belong to this group of people, we go uptown on Friday nights. That's very common, I think, in a small town, perhaps, or wherever. Um, and so it's about being informed. It's about like, are you just going along with the humdrum of alcohol because of what you learned, because of what you witnessed as a child, because of just culture and what came to you? I mean, even just like going to college, it's so normal versus Carolina is giving us hard data, facts, like what actually happens to the brain, what happens with the chemicals in the brain when we drink alcohol. And when we know that, it's like, would we really choose to reach for that? Or would we reach for a bath, a run, time with our dog, etc.? And again, she coaches people through this journey. Can you share a little bit more about how you help people through this journey? If someone is listening and they are like, I'm intrigued, what are some great places they could start with? What are like some tips and or again like some programs or your book, which we're also going to plug down below? Where can they begin?
Yeah, so I think my book and you know one thing that's really great is to recognize that like it's not just the replacement, it's not just like getting rid of the negative of alcohol, but like most people actually don't know what it feels like to live alcohol free. Like literally in our society, unless you're pregnant, like we don't even get an excuse to live without alcohol. Everyone's always like, well, why aren't you drinking? Is it this? Is it that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Obviously, things are changing now.
Yeah.
Things are really changing now. It is cool. But you know, like
Becoming
10
much
years
more
ago, you
normal.
would have been looked at like with three horns coming out of your head if you said no thank you at a party. And so what
Absolutely.
that is really fascinating is like most people don't know what it feels like to live without alcohol, especially as they rewire their brain's assumptions and patterns around it. And that creates a high of its own. Like all the neurochemicals I was just talking about, when they rebalance, you literally feel like you're high off of watching the clouds and the trees. You literally feel high when you go out for the first time and don't drink and are able to actually socialize in your own skin, confident and stuff like that. So there's this huge boost in your like your mental health, your mental powers, and all this kind of stuff. But I think like one of the coolest things to start with is, you know, testing it for yourself. And really recognizing whether it's your first break or your fourth break, I know dry January is really popular these days,
Yeah.
that when you are able to really reprogram your subconscious around it, you can lose the desire to drink completely. And that is total freedom because it doesn't even matter. You don't have to be a non-drinker forever. You don't have to be like a never drinker. But if you were never compelled to drink by these subconscious associations, these cravings, these habits that were formed over years and years and years, you truly had the power of choice. Like,
Yeah.
how powerful would you really feel and would you really be? And so, yes, get started with my book. I also have a membership called Euphoric the Club where we teach you how to lose the desire to drink as you're being surrounded by successful women who don't drink, right? It's a
Yeah.
really powerful space where you look at these childhood associations, you look at, you know, the different experiences you had with drinking growing up, you looked at all the reasons why you were using it for, and you start to dissolve all of it, right? And completely rewrite the meanings for yourself. And once you get to that point, like I just celebrated 8 years alcohol free. I haven't had a craving for alcohol in 8 years. Like I went and attacked this work so heavily. It was so important. And like, you know, I believe in sustainability. And especially because I'm in the sober space, there were a
Yeah.
lot of different methods around and different times, different histories and stuff like that. But it's like if we as sober influencers aren't showing people that they can like completely lose the pain and lose the drive to drink in the first place, then I feel like we're not doing our jobs, right? Because this isn't about depriving yourself. This isn't about even being the outcast. Like, you're not the outcast. You know who you are? You're actually the leader of the pack.
Yes.
So many people want to drink less or not at all. It's up to 50%. So it's like when you are in a space, what 25% of people already don't drink, and that number has skyrocketed over the years too. So let's say
That's
there's
why.
four of you. One person already doesn't drink, then there's you, then there's two other people who wish they drank less or not at all. When you actually go there and show up with a mocktail and like talk about how good you feel the next day or whatever it is, you're actually inspiring other people. You are not the outcast. And I literally looked to other inspirers as I was going alcohol free, and I started noticing something uncanny. The most successful people I looked up to, the best-selling authors that I loved their books, the mentors, the leaders, the entrepreneurs, the self-help gurus. Oh my God, they don't drink. What do you know, right? And I now carry a list of so many people, whether it's Tony Robbins or Jay Shetty or Gabby Bernstein or Brene Brown, they're all non-drinkers, you know? And I just think that goes to show that when you are here with a big mission in your life, when you are here to make an impact, when you have a huge purpose, alcohol has no place in it. And what's really beautiful about that is that when you decide to reevaluate alcohol, when you start to get that tap on the shoulder that it's not serving you, that maybe it's time to outgrow it, It is a sign from the universe that you have a huge purpose. And a lot of people are not going to listen to that tap. A lot of people are going to keep shoving it under a rug because obviously everybody has a big purpose, right? But some people are just going to ignore it. Some people are going to keep doing their patterns, but
Yep.
not you, right? You decided to lean in to get curious and see where this would take you. And with that, I actually think this journey has the biggest status symbol ever because for so long it was thought of as embarrassing to like go alcohol
Yes.
free or reevaluate alcohol. No, this is your glow up moment. This is the biggest status symbol ever. And you are meant to be a huge leader and have a huge impact. And honestly, if you don't know what your purpose is yet, and you're like, I don't know what I do, like allow yourself, like, I don't think I would have arrived at the seven-figure business and the best-selling book and retiring my husband and traveling to 62 countries and living out my dream life. None of that I think I would have arrived at when I was still in my cubicle using alcohol as a way to unwind on the weekend. I had to go through the alcohol-free journey first in order to unleash my purpose, in order to go after my biggest goals and dreams, and now be here today. And that's something I'm so passionate about, whether you're already alcohol free, like I love helping people become coaches and leaders and thought leaders, and especially as well, and write books and stuff like that, or you're just at the beginning questioning it as well. It
Yeah.
is it is really exciting work for me because I think it's ultimately the power of awakening. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? It's like somehow, some way we are asleep at the wheel with life. Life is way too long and hard that we do become numb at one point, and like this
Yes.
is the awakening
Yes.
back into
Yes.
your power.
This is the awakening. This is the awakening back into your power, back into your purpose. But you're right, not everybody will be ready. But for those of you that are listening, you'll know. You'll know. Like something in this episode already is stirring you. And while there can be many different roads to stepping into your purpose, but for many of us, it starts with literally looking at our daily habits. And is what I'm doing on a daily or weekly basis actually serving me or not? Or is it actually dampening my desires? Is it dampening what I really want to do? So if you've been tuning into this episode and you are curious and you've heard Karolina has programs wherever you may be at in your journey. So whether you're just curious and you maybe want to start inside her membership or the book, as well as maybe you have actually been already dabbling in sober free, but now you want to get more clear on how do I be a coach? How do I build my business? How do I write my book? She also has programs for that as well. So please go check her out and follow her on social media. Again, I'll have her links down below. Karolina, is there anything else you want to leave the audience, the listeners with before we wrap this up? This has been such a phenomenal conversation, and it's been an honor to just hear you talk about your passion and purpose and share that with all of us.
Of course, and aside from like the alcohol-free story, like I didn't know what I wanted to do for so long, and I got like very little clues, and I just felt very confused for a very long time. And I have never been more rock solid in my purpose and what I was put on this planet to do today. And not only has that come to me in different signs and symbols and all those kinds of things, but I'm also living in an era where there's more opportunity than there's ever been before. And I just compare that to a few generations ago where my ancestors went through bombings and wars and concentration camps and famines and barely surviving. I know I'm standing on the shoulders of giants to be able to be here today, the lineage successor of the most incredible survivors who
Yes.
literally didn't have the opportunity to ask themselves what they wanted. They just had to survive. Just imagine a woman 150 years ago being like, I'm gonna go fulfill my dreams. Like, yeah, right. You're gonna work the farm and have like nine babies, and
Yes.
you're lucky if I don't hit you at the end of the day, right?
Yes.
Like that
Yes.
was a woman's life. So,
Yes.
not knowing what you want in the world is actually a defense mechanism that is passed down through our family traumas and mindsets. It is not something that's wrong with you. For most of human history, having what you wanted was not a luxury afforded to you. And I
Yes.
think that we truly are living in one of the first eras of human history where, yes, what you want not only is possible, but it is actually your destiny and your birthright, and you can trust your desires. And your ancestors lived through everything they lived through so you could be the one in your lineage to actually achieve the goals and dreams that they never had the opportunity to even desire. And they are all standing behind you and they are all supporting you to do this. And so it's like, I like to joke about this. You know, you talked about having like wine and Netflix earlier, but like your ancestors did not survive wars and famines for you to open bottles of wine and watch Netflix all night, right? And I will say I do still watch Netflix, so I am
I
making
know.
fun of myself as well. But I just mean in the bigger scheme of things, like you have a huge purpose and you like don't ever forget how big that is and how
Yeah,
unique that is to you and to continue discovering it. One of the best questions that I ask my clients as well is like, take money off the table. Like, imagine no matter what you chose, you got a six-figure salary. Would you still be in the same role as you are today? Would you still have the same like company or job or title or whatnot? What if you won the lottery and had like more money than you knew what to do with? Like, what would you want to do to have a sense of meaning and contribution in this planet? And oftentimes people have much different answers than the things that they've chosen or been fallen into themselves as well. And I
yeah,
think it takes a lot of radical thinking and a lot of shifting to like really go after the life you want. But I'm sure, you know, you showcase so many other leaders and amazing women who are doing it. So I just
yeah,
hope that this is another inspiring story for people in your audience to go after it. And when you're already in your purpose, I know how hard it can be because also there's a lot of ups and downs with it too. It's like
absolutely.
stand in the conviction and like lean on the powers, whether it's like the universe, your ancestors, all the things that got you up to this moment right now were not an accident. Like you have to be so convicted that this is what you were put on the planet to do. And everything that flops and every month that doesn't work for you and an income, like all this stuff, it's only building you into a stronger version of yourself of an impact maker.
Yes, yes. Oh my gosh. Total mic drop. That was beautiful. That was so well said that all of our ancestors and the people that came before us, they didn't have this opportunity. Oftentimes, they didn't have the liberty and the freedom to pursue their dreams, and we do. And it is our right, but also our privilege to like take that next step and to say yes. And I so appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. And it's why I started the Legacy CEO series, because while this podcast has we talk about a lot of different things from spiritual awakenings, intuition, living in your purpose, but specifically with the Legacy CEO series, and it's an honor to have you on. I really wanted to pull out, like we say, success stories, right? Like people who've like gotten really successful. And it's not because it's like a status thing or like a hierarchy thing, but I want to create this reality and this norm that when you pursue your dreams and you say yes over and over to your purpose, even when it feels scary, even when it feels doubtful, like this is what's possible. Like Karolina is just a normal girl as well. She watches Netflix. She grew up like just like you and I. She has comes from a family of immigrants and came here with dreams and possibilities, and she did it. And you can too. And so I just thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for sharing your story. I'm going to be putting the links down below of how to connect with her, how to get to her book, and whatever else she wants to share with us. That will all be down in the show notes. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you. This was so much fun.